Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am chatting all about mold toxicity, air quality, how indoor air is actually more polluted than outdoor air, and what to look for when buying a high quality, effective air filter. My guest is Helen Cristoni, who is the President of Marketing for the Amazing Air / Doctor company, who are a sister company. And this was taken from an Instagram live that we did in September. And I wanted to share it with you here on the podcast as well, because air filters are something that I recommend to literally everyone, but definitely my clients and my followers and audience with health struggles, because there's so many toxins that we're exposed to, both from our home and off-gassing from furniture, but also externally, things like pollutants and heavy metals and mold, mycotoxins. It is just something that we really need to be mindful of because of the sheer number of breaths that we're taking every day. I really feel like clean air, clean food, and clean water are the foundations of health. And having struggled with mold toxicity myself and having it be a big driver of health issues, high quality air is something that's going to be top priority for me for the rest of my life now. So in this episode, we are covering my journey and how mold filters aren't all created equal, what to look for, what particle size to purchase when looking for a filter, because then there might be some expensive, good looking ones on the market or at your local hardware store, but they are going to be a bit of a waste of money if you're trying to buy something that's filtering mycotoxins and they're not getting down to that particular level. There were a few listener questions as well, like should I have my windows open or closed when I'm running my air filters, how to effectively clean them if you're struggling with mold, and a lot of extra things that I think you're going to really benefit from. So check out this episode. There is a little bit of technical difficulties at the start with the sound quality. There's a bit of feedback for the first few minutes, but then we figure it out, we sort it out. We recorded this in Mercury retrograde, so don't hold us accountable. We are blaming it on the universal laws. But I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to check out the Amazing Air or Air Doctor filters, if you're in the US, it's Air Doctor. If you're in the UK or EU, it's Amazing Air. I am going to put my links, my affiliate links, which will give you a nice juicy discount as well in the episode show notes. All the links, as always, in my Instagram bio, so you can check them out. And they run sales at multiple times of the year. I think the sale on sale might have just ended, but there's always a discount with the code that I use. So I hope you enjoy, and let's get into this episode with Helen of Amazing Air.
Hi.
Hello! I'm looking at you on two screens.
I know. Welcome to the Amazing Air UK channel. And I'm so excited to talk all about air quality with you today.
Me too. It's like one of my favorite subjects. I never would have thought it. I never thought I would be talking about mold and environmental toxicity in my life, but it's become one of my favorite things.
I also never thought that I'd become an air quality educator. And it was just through discovery and learning that I got so passionate about educating women, homeowners, family, business people, health experts about the importance of clean air because nobody really knows. We've done such a massive job of polluting our planet and the harm that indoor air quality can have on your health. And so I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you today.
Me too. And it was something, even at my nutrition college, my holistic studies, air quality was kind of mentioned, but only for things like asthma, which was never something that I struggled with. So I automatically just thought it wasn't something that I needed to hear about. But then when I was personally struggling with chronic fatigue and chronic pain and skin issues, I didn't think that it could be anything to do with air quality, but it turns out it was a big deal.
Yeah. And I think that also one thing I always like to talk about is people don't really understand the effect that bad air quality has on your health and the symptoms. So some really basic symptoms of being exposed to poor indoor air quality are things like scratchy throat, itchy, watery eyes, headache, a feeling of just not feeling good, like heavy and just kind of like oppressed in your overall, physical well-being. And so sometimes people like say, oh, my resistance is down. It's probably not your resistance, it's probably the poor air quality. And so when I notice this most is when I travel. Like I have been in the clean air business now for a long time. So when I'm at home, I sleep beautifully, I feel great, everything's amazing. But if I go to like a hotel, like not too long ago, we were in a hotel and it was built in the 60s. It was just awful. And none of us, me and the entire team, we all felt horrible. And I'm like, it's the indoor air,
We should
you
have all
know?
packed an air filter.
Yeah, 100%. And what about you? Like, tell me a little bit more about your health journey and how you really understood that this was a issue.
So the childhood home that I grew up in was built in the 1900s. In places like England, especially, the buildings are really old. And I know you were in London earlier in the year, so you know that it can be higher risk, but that also doesn't rule out newer builds. And they can still have issues with water leaks. They're not immune to that. And sometimes even the way that these newer properties are built to be more energy efficient and saving on bills, it can actually mean that the ventilation and the air quality is a lot poorer. So the newer builds, you can't avoid mold. Unfortunately, there are some other risk factors. So the home that I grew up in, it is hundreds of years old. So even before we moved in as a family, there could have been leaks and floods that we just don't know about. People don't tell the next property owner about anything like that. It can be sometimes overlooked, or they don't think it's that important, or we don't ask the right questions. But then definitely when we lived there, there was one event, maybe when I was like 13, 14 years old. It was a really cold winter and then a really hot summer. So I think the pipes under the house had burst. And then it led to a lot of water underneath the house, which my dad realized. He caught it pretty early and he bailed the water out. He tried his best to dry it out, but I don't think it was enough. It obviously wasn't enough because a few years after that, specifically on another hot summer, that's when a lot of our health issues started. And that summer, when I was about 19, I'd gone to work in the US, so I'd had time away. I'd had pretty much the whole summer away from that house. And I think my body had started to detox, which can happen. Sometimes within a few days, you feel a relief, you feel like your brain fog's clearing. So that is a question that I ask my clients quite a lot. Do you feel better when you're away from home? And some people, they do notice after a week or so. It's not going to be in a couple of days, but I was away for like pretty much 3 months straight. And then when I came home, there was a number of reasons that my health really crashed that year. But I think the re-exposure to mold after the really hot summer, the mold had really gotten bad. That's when everything kicked off with my health. And yeah, I was really sick shortly following that. And so were my parents. I was the canary in the coal mine, so I was the worst affected. I was the one who had a laundry list of symptoms affecting all of the different body systems, my hormones, my skin, my immune system, my gut. My parents still had symptoms, but they weren't as affected as I was, and everyone had very different symptoms. My dad, around that time, started to develop food allergies for the first time in his life. Anaphylactic level allergies to things like peppers and shellfish and chilies. And then my mum was really struggling with her asthma. She was struggling with autoimmune thyroid, so she was diagnosed with an autoimmune thyroid condition. She was having some joint pain and fatigue, palpitations, and then I had like the skin issues, period problems. For me, it mimicked and drove a lot of my PCOS symptoms because of the effect that it has on inflammation and blood sugar. It can really affect the whole body. So that was when I was 19, and I continued to live there because I didn't know about this at the time. I only put two and two together a few years ago, actually. And then it wasn't until I was about 25, so I continued to live there after my health crashed for another 4, 5, 6 years, just doing a little bit better because after that trip, I started to study naturopathic nutrition, naturopathic medicine, and I started to clean up my diet, and it really did make a difference. I was taking care of my body a lot better, and that was helping my body to detoxify slightly better. But there came a point where it was just getting too complex. Like I was doing all the right things. I was eating perfectly. I was taking supplements. I was detoxing, and I still wasn't well. And at that point, I was like, something's going on. It isn't normal for me to have to be super strict for the rest of my life with food and have to be in bed by 9 o'clock every night in order to have decent energy. So I was managing my symptoms really well. But then I started to look into the causes of my histamine sensitivity, because I also became very, very reactive to a lot of foods. I was down to about 10 foods at my worst that I could tolerate. And I knew that I had a histamine problem. And then I started seeing these naturopathic functional doctors online talk about things like mast cell activation syndrome, chemical sensitivities, and what could be at the root of that. So it was doctors like Dr. Jess, who's great online. She was talking about mold, and I just started to hear about it more and more. When that happens in my life, I have to pay attention. Even if it's someone recommending a book or a podcast, if I hear it multiple times, I'm like, there's something here for me. And then one day, randomly at the blue, I feel like it was the universe sending me a gift. But I got through the mail an invitation to a seminar, because I was a practitioner at the time. And the title of it was Histamines, or Mast Cells and Mold. And I was like, okay, this. I know I'm struggling with mast cell issues. Let's go along. So this was just an experience in London. And in that experience, it was through Great Plains Labs. And they offered a mycotoxin urine test to guests and to attendees. Did the test. It lit up like a Christmas tree. It was off the charts, super high in some really damaging molds. One of them, mycophenolic acid, was extremely high. And this is one I now know is actually used as a medication to suppress your immune system when someone has organ transplants. And I was breathing that in. So no wonder my immune system was rock bottom. And it was weird because parts of my symptoms were a weak immune system. So I just wasn't healing properly, and I had all of these infections in my body. But then another part of my immune system was very overreactive, where it was like allergies, histamine, mast cell. And that was what was very confusing for me. But it turns out mold does that very commonly. So after that, the good thing is that I was already planning on moving out of my childhood home at about 25, I think, at the time. So I'd already got an apartment lined up, and this was 2020. And that was when COVID and lockdowns and all of that happened. So I should have been moving in the January, literally 2 months after I found out about mold. But with the delays, I ended up staying there for another 6 months, which was really hard. And I was just so desperate to get out into a new environment, because that was holding my health back. I just couldn't heal until I addressed the air quality side of things. But I eventually moved June 2020. And within a few days, I felt the brain fog start to lift. I took before and after pictures of my face, and even my eyes were bloodshot and really just looked really sick. And then a few days later, they were bright and they were blue, and they just looked so much more healthy. But it did really take months for things like my hormones to start to come back online. And I feel like I went through a mini puberty that year, because my hormones were just so suppressed and I wasn't ovulating. And then it's like I'd been on the birth control pills for 10 years and my body started to rebalance again. But for the real healing, it took a good 1 to 2 years, because I developed mast cell activation syndrome and things like POTS as a result. So it was quite a complex case. I mean, I'd lived in that house for 20 years since I was 4 years old. So I had a lot of healing to do, and I've used many tools, and now I'm very mindful of my air quality. And because of how sick I've been in the past, I will forever use tools like air filters in my home, because it's not just mold, it's other environmental toxins and chemicals that we can be exposed to. So that is my one non-negotiable. I don't need to do as much in-depth detoxing and treatment as I did a few years ago, because my body is pretty resilient now and I can do well. But I do notice when I go in, like you said, into hotels, and I go on trips into a moldy cottage in the wilderness for a few days, I can handle it because my toxic load is lower now, but I wouldn't want to stay there for a long duration of time. So air filters are non-negotiable for me. And I did my research. I was looking at good quality brands in the UK. And at the time, Amazing like right at the start, it didn't exist in the UK. It was just Air Doctor. And I would see some of these doctors talk about Air Doctor, and I was like, I really want to get this brand. And then I saw it one day that Amazing Air was coming out, and I was like, immediately, I need to partner with these guys because I just couldn't find an alternative that was good, and it was filtering the particle level that I needed for the mycotoxins. I don't want to just clean my air in general. It's like with water filters, the Brita filter jugs that you can buy at your local grocery store, that they're just going to improve the taste slightly and maybe reduce one toxin, but you want the really good quality stuff, and you get what you pay for. But there's some really expensive brands out there that I still wouldn't use. So yeah, the only brand that I use and recommend now is Amazing Earth slash Doctor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, and thank you, I mean, I think it's like, wow, to think that you lived in that house for so long and you were exposed to mold at those levels. And I just think it's a real misconception, and people don't realize, like in England, I mean, we know that, I mean, there are a lot of older homes there, and there's a tremendous air problem and mold problem in these homes. Here in the United States, 75% of the homes here in the United States have mold issues.
Yeah,
And
I'd
no one,
probably say it's the same. I don't think the checks have been done, but I would say it's on a similar level. And a lot of the times it's invisible. In my childhood home, there was not one visible patch of black mold. It was
no,
an old house, and when I did start to pay attention, there was a musty smell. So that was a little bit of a giveaway, but I became nose blind to it. It's like with the garbage men. If they're exposed to it all day, every day, you don't notice. But when I started to learn about mold, I would purposely have some time away from the house, and then I'd come back and I'd very like actively try and smell what was going on, and I could, because I was paying attention to it and I had a bit of a break.
well, let's talk a little bit about air filtration, because I think that, air filters and air filtration is really complex. And, we're talking about mold on this live today. So I'm really going to drill in here a little bit on particle size. So there's lots of HEPA filters that you can go out and you can grab at a like a handy store. Here in the US we have like Home Depots, but like a hardware store, right? That you can bring in and you can have in the house. So your normal HEPA filter removes particles to zero point 0.3 microns. And for allergies and stuff, and for some mold, it's okay. Like pet dander dust, whatever, like it'll catch some of that. And it's absolutely better than nothing. But what the more harmful particles are things smaller than 2.5 microns. And so what people don't understand is when like we take like around 22,000 breaths a day. That equates to 3,000 gallons of air that we are breathing a day. And what people don't understand is it's the small microns. Mold goes as small as zero point 0.1 micron. So it goes much smaller than the 0.3. Air Doctor and Amazing Air removes particle size down to 0.003 microns. So we're basically, we remove 100 times smaller contaminants than a regular HEPA filter. And these small contaminants, not only are we breathing them, they penetrate our brains. So when you get a really small particle, it's able to break the brain barrier. And so you're not just breathing, it's not just getting into your cells, it's not just getting into your lungs, it's not just getting into your bloodstream, it's actually getting into your brain. And so hence brain fog, headaches, not feeling well, like low energy, just feeling hazy. This is because these microparticles are the most dangerous. And so if we're not protecting ourselves for really, really super fine particles, we're not doing the job, because we can have another filter. It's just not getting rid of the most dangerous particle size. And so the type of air purifier you have in your home, it really, really matters. And you always want to make sure that you're removing particles down to 0.003 microns. Another thing that's really important is viruses, right? Air Doctor Amazing Air is one of 2 companies that have actually tested to remove COVID from the air, H1N1. And so we're very proud that we spent the money to do that testing. We were able to get that testing done because you always also want to think about virus, because there's nothing worse than being like having an autoimmune issue, being immune compromised, and then on top of it, you're susceptible to virus, right? So, it's just like you're in this constant state of not being well. So, we're very, very proud at Air Doctor Amazing Air that we really have taken the time to understand the science. We've put out these beautiful, high quality ultra HEPA filters. And they really, like, if you suffer from these things, or if you have mold in the house, first of all, if you have a really big mold problem, you got to remediate it, right? But what it will do is, in the interim, it will pull it from the air. Like we remove down to that particle size. So it's a really, really great machine for people who suffer from this.
If we're talking about the brain is literally the manager of the whole body. So it
Yeah.
can definitely cause brain-based symptoms, but your brain's in control of your hormones. So I really believe my pituitary gland, my hypothalamus, my like the start of my hormone signaling was just suppressed. I even did a lot of blood work over the years because of my health struggles, and there was a large chunk of time that my testosterone was completely suppressed, like a menopausal woman, my FSH and LH, so follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. It was like my body was in menopause, and it would just completely shut down in my early 20s, which is crazy. And then things like your blood pressure can even be affected, your cortisol levels can be affected as well because of the impact that it's having on your brain. And although a lot of my health issues kicked off when I was like 18 or 19, when I look back into my childhood, I always used to say I was really healthy, didn't have any issues. But when I look back, there were definitely signs of mold with the symptoms that I was having. I had a lot of nosebleeds. I had a lot of travel sickness and dizziness and fainting. And me and my brother, we would call it lava of the head, because we'd have I know they're called ice pick pains now, but we just did not know. We didn't know anyone else who was struggling with them. And it's really scary, actually. And it was very painful when it would happen. But every few weeks, we'd have this like cracking feeling in our head, and then this rush of like blood, and it was just horrible. And yeah, now I know it's called ice pick pain. It feels like someone's stabbing you with an ice pick. It can happen in other areas of your body. And since I've moved out of mold, it did actually, when I started detoxing and mobilizing these mycotoxins out of my fat tissue and my organs and my brain, they really ramped up for a little bit. But now I've not had one in years since detoxing. I would have them very regularly. Same with my brother, he's not had them either. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while now, you've probably heard me talking about the importance of minerals. I know that you're trying to balance your hormones, detox your liver, heal your gut, but minerals are actually key for these things to happen. They really are the spark plugs of the body. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that unless you're working on mineral balancing, you're probably not going to see results when it comes to things like energy, skin, digestion, and period problems. So many of us are mineral deficient or imbalanced these days due to soil depletion, chronic stress, poor gut health, medication usage, and big mistakes that I see clients making is supplementing in the wrong way and following intense healing practices. Trying to DIY your health with self-supplementation, restricted diets, and crazy detoxes can actually throw your mineral levels out of whack. It's important to know which specific minerals you have to determine the treatment that you need, and that's exactly why I created my mineral balancing course, I'm Balanced, so that you can get your hands on my favourite functional lab test, the Hair Tissue Mineral Analysis. Yes, this can be done from anywhere in the world. Here's what you get in this programme. 1 complimentary HTMA test, over 8 hours of video education, helping you to understand your unique lab results and exactly what you need to do to balance things naturally. Plus the tools to support you and your family long-term with a deeper understanding of minerals. All this is just £447, including the lab test. Then long-term, you can just purchase additional tests for yourself and your loved ones, because this is a test that I recommend everyone does 1 to 2 times a year to make sure you're staying as balanced as possible. You could get started today with your hair sample and have answers within a few weeks once the results come back. Get instant access to the course material by clicking the link in the episode show notes.
Yeah, and I think that I think that also, there's so much other stuff in the air, right? So, like right outside here where I am in Los Angeles, we have a major highway. And there are studies showing that anybody that lives within 2 miles of a major highway or a major intersection is at risk for cognitive issues, cognitive decline. Bad air quality can really affect children's learning abilities and their cognitive function. And so now we're having these links that poor air quality has direct links to dementia. So I mean, that's a really big deal. It's one of our biggest issues that as a global community that we're facing. And so really, really important that if you live in a metropolis or in a city, that you're filtering your air, because not only do we have what's in the house, like we have everything that's outside the house that's coming in. And so if you live by farmland or if you live in the city, like everything that's happening outside is coming right in. And you can tell, like, when you're in a major city, you could just like feel the pollution.
Oh
And
yeah,
that
at the
is
end
just,
of the day, you wash your face and it's like black coming off.
and it seeps into our house. And then when we get into our house, like aside from maybe having a water leak and all these things that are happening, we're adding things like fragrances, cleaning materials, all these things. Like I always talk about dry shampoo. Like, anytime you use something like a dry shampoo or anything like that, that's not good for your air quality. If there's any gas appliances in the house, gas stoves, things like that, all of that is pumping into the air. Another thing is candles.
Mhm.
Candles are made from paraffin. Paraffin, when burned, turns into petroleum. And we're basically like lighting these like really, really dangerous petroleum based candles in our homes that are really, really horrible for our health. And so, when we get in our house, it's really important to, and this is one thing I really love about Amazing Air, is that it teaches you about the behaviors in your house that are causing air pollution in your home. And, indoor air can be 100 times more polluted than outdoor air because it gets trapped in the box, and so, um, Amazing Air and Air Doctor both, it has an indicator light on it. And when it's red, when it detects something in the air, it kicks on, the red light goes off, there's this big light show, the fans power on, and it works harder to clean the air in the room. And then it'll cycle through orange and then to blue. So when you use dry shampoo, you light that candle, you cook something on the stove, a dog walks by, it lets you know, that there's something going on in or if you vacuum, heaven forbid, and really, like if you have a mold issue in your house, this is really important. The last thing you want to do is be vacuuming and kicking all that stuff up. So like as you vacuum, you think that you're cleaning, but actually you're putting all those mold spores right back up into the air because they move and you're breathing them in. So super important that like if you have a house and you have mold challenges, turn your air purifier on high. Turn that Amazing Air on high when you vacuum. Really important. And then lastly, I always like to tell this story. We have a woman who works here. Her name's Serena, and she had her air doctor, because she's here in the States, was orange. And she was like, I don't know what's wrong with my air doctor. Like it's orange all the time. Turns out that she had a little smolder behind her bed, and she ended up having a fire. And then also, so I tell this story a lot when I do trainings and I do webinars. I'm talking about Serena and this fire that she had and how her air doctor was telling her. And so then I have a partner of ours. She's heard this story. Her air purifier, her air doctor was stuck on orange. And she remembered, like I always say, like if your air doctor's talking to you, listen. So if your Amazing Air is talking to you, make sure you listen. So it was on orange, it was under an air duct. She had her air ducts checked and she had mold in her air ducts. And the machine was trying to let her know. So they're really smart machines. They're not complicated and they really become a part of the family. And so I really think that it's such an important foundational thing that we can do for our health. Air and water are the two basics that we need to make sure are as pure as possible. And once you have that covered, then supplement. But like if you're breathing in toxic air and you're drinking toxic water, you can do all the supplementation you want, and you're going to have a hard time detoxing.
Like even with organic food, it's still important, but if you think of the quantity of water and air versus food, you need so much more of those things. So obviously, if you can afford and access all three, clean air, clean food, clean water, that is the duo, that's a trio of amazing health. But I would still prioritize your air quality
100%.
from what I know now. And the exposure to mold and what it did to my immune system in triggering mast cell activation and chemical sensitivity, I'm kind of grateful for it because now at one stage I just could not use fragrances and candles and all of that. Like I would have a physical reaction, whereas now my body is just repelled by them. I can spot a plug-in a mile away. If I go into someone's house, I'll detect it right away and I'll be like, turn that off. You got to turn it off. Got to protect my
Glad you brought
hormones.
that up. The worst is Ubers, right?
Oh
When you
yeah.
hop in Uber and they have the artificial fragrance, like I like freak out. Like
They
I'm
have like
like, get
10
out
of
of the car.
the little air fresheners in the back. I'm like, sure, surely one is enough.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about I think it's important that we really talk about amazing air and how it works. And so we have triple filtration technology. And so we have a couple things. We have a pre-filter. And the pre-filter, and you can see like there's a lot of videos of people showing their dirty filter. The pre-filter catches dust, pet hair, all these big things, and it gets really, really dirty. It's picking up the significant big dirt in the house. Then we have our ultra HEPA filter. Our ultra HEPA filter is what's picking up things like mold spores, pollen, dust, viruses. That's what's reducing down to 0.003 microns. So not all HEPA filters are made from the same material. And we've had ours independently tested to prove that it removes 0.003 microns and then also that it removes viruses like COVID, H1N1, down to 99.97%, which is amazing. And then we have our carbon filter. So that's what really makes Air Doctor special because some of the things like fragrance, those are the things we can't see. These things that we can't see that are invisible, gases, formaldehyde, things from our furniture that off gas. Like anytime you paint a nail with some nail polish, you're inhaling formaldehyde. I mean, there's really bad things that happen. Also, when you apply heat to chemical, I always use like when you blow dry your hair, if you have some product in your hair and it touches heat, you see that it creates this gas. That gas is something that a carbon filter will pick up. Also, gas stoves. And kind of they treat all of our furniture, all of our curtains, hardwood flooring, paint. I can go on and on about all the things that have really harmful volatile organic compounds that our carbon filter removes. So and then it's a completely sealed system. So, if you have a mold challenge in your house, and this is what we're focusing on today, the last thing you want is for it to go in the machine and then come back out. Right. So the machines are completely sealed and what is going in is not coming out until you change the filter. So you have a mold challenge and you know this. And so you have an amazing air in your house. What do you do when you change the filters? Please take it outside and make sure you wear gloves. If you have a mask, wear a mask and change it, tie it up in a plastic bag, seal it, and then put it in the rubbish bin. Because it's really important that you do this outside. You change your filters outside if you have this issue in your home. And it's a good practice to do anyway. So super effective product for people that are really facing mold challenges.
One of the questions that I got that kind of ties into that, someone asked how long to keep it running. I would personally say just all day, every day.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
100%. So we have an auto mode. It draws very little power, so it's not really going to increase your electricity bill. I think that you should have the air being purified all day. And what happens with Air Doctor and Amazing Air is that it moves the air in the room. So in order to clean the air in the room, you need a machine that's powerful enough to move the air in a room. So, like our standard unit, the Amazing Air 3500, it will move the air in a 600 square foot room 4 to 5 times an hour. And so let's say you come home from work, you come home from being gone, your air is fresh because it's been working all day. When you turn it off and you walk into the house and you walk into that musty room, and so these are the things that, like, once you kind of live in this clean air environment, you definitely don't want to go back. And
It's the
especially, I
stagnancy
always
that's
say,
really, really bad for you, isn't it? Even on a physical level, stagnancy in the gut, stagnancy in the lymphatic system, the circulatory system, that is the breeding ground for disease.
Yeah, and really important, that the most important room to have an air purifier is your bedroom. We spend most of our time in our homes, in our bedrooms, and once you sleep with an amazing air, it's a game changer. And also for children, like for our kids, it's a game changer in sleep. And if people suffer from allergies, if they have asthma, like my daughter suffered with allergies and just waking up congested her whole life, and she was a singer. And so she'd have to, wait a couple hours before she'd get clear enough to be able to sing. And when she was in school, when she was in music school, she was struggling. She's like, I can't sing in the morning. I'm going to these classes. I feel like crap. And I put an air doctor, because she was here in the United States, and she called me and she was like, Mom, like, this changed my life. I could sing. Like, I was able to go to school. I was able to sing. And it, like, it was something that bothered her, but the change that happened by one night, just having that air purifier in the room, was instant. So really, really important, and so good for our children.
To me, it feels like I've got the fresh air like at the top of a mountain. I just feel like I'm in this like crisp, clean room. It's so good. I can definitely feel the difference.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Like, someone's asking right now, Navstar, I see, is 3500 the only model? No, we also have a 2000, which is smaller, for smaller rooms. And so we have the 3500, which is it's for medium to large size rooms. And then we have the 2000, and the 2000 is for smaller rooms, bedrooms, and what I would recommend for most of the bedroom sizes in the UK.
Mm-hmm. And there's another couple of questions from the same person. How does Amazing compare to IntelliPure? I'm
Well,
guessing
I
that's
looked at
another brand. I don't know if you know that brand.
Yeah, no, I do. Like, according to their website, IntelliPure removes down to 0.1 micron. And so Amazing Air removes down to 0.003 micron. So it's definitely, according to their website, and I'm not an expert on their product, but we are able to claim that we remove particles down to 0.003 microns. So it appears that we remove a little bit more.
And I know these numbers are very tiny, but that is such a huge difference.
That's virus. So, so yeah, viruses are 0.006 microns. So 0.1 micron isn't going to remove that from the air. And a lot of these gases and things that, so I always say that, like, the main thing is this virus and bacteria that really get us sick. They're very, very, very small. And the smaller the micron and the size of the particulate matter, the more dangerous, because they could break through the blood-brain barrier. And so yeah, really, like, the smaller the contaminant, the more dangerous it is for your health.
And they usually tend to overgrow together with this sick building syndrome, where if you do have mold, there's very likely viruses and bacteria present as well. So getting a filter like Amazing Air is going to help. Even if you don't really know which of them is the most overgrown, it's just worth getting it anyway. And I think the following question's kind of a joint one for us both. So what test did you do to check for MCAS and mycotoxins in your body? So I did the Great Plains Labs urine mycotoxin test. I think the lab is now called Mosaic Labs. They've changed the name, but it's the urine mycotoxin test. And I personally didn't go for the formal MCAS diagnosis just because I research and it can be very, very expensive and also not 100% accurate. So I'm just going based off my symptoms. It's undeniable that I had mast cell activation given the severity of my symptoms. Like at one stage, I was having seizures, really crazy food reactions. So I was just textbook case. So I never actually had the formal diagnosis, but I don't think that matters too much given my symptoms. And then the follow-up questions were, do the air filters completely kill the mold? Oh, just that one question then. My main concern is that the filter might act as a petri dish and not kill.
Okay, so it's not killing the mold, it's capturing the mold. And it's a sealed system, so what goes in doesn't come out. But you do have to change your filters and replace the filters. So you bring it in and then you change them. And you change the carbon filter every 6 months and the ultra HEPA filter every year. And so, like I said, Amazing Air and Air Doctor are both sealed systems. What goes in does not come out.
The lights will also let you know when it's time to replace as well. So if you forget, you'll also get the signal.
Yeah, and some people really like it kind of depends. Like here in the United States, we had East Palestine, Ohio, which was a really, really bad chemical spill. We actually advised our customers in that area to double up their carbon filter because of the poisonous gas in the air, right? And sometimes, like if you have a really, really bad issue, you can always double up. Like if carbon and volatile organic compounds, like if volatile organic compounds isn't your biggest concern, you can always double up the HEPA filter. Like if you have a house that has a really, really severe problem, I would recommend doing that actually. And also, I think that, so that's one of the things, like when we designed this product, it was designed after hospital grade air purifiers. We really try to make something for consumers that you find in hospitals. So making sure it was completely sealed was a really, really important thing for us here.
And something else that is recommended is just to prolong the life of the filters, is that you can vacuum them down. Would that be helpful for someone who's actively living in mold? And would they fall into more risk doing that with the vacuum then being contaminated, do you think?
Well,
Obviously doing it
like
outside if they're doing it, but
100%. Like, I think that people with the vacuuming, like that's for people that typically have like a lot of pets,
all
right?
right.
So if you have a lot of cats or a lot of dogs and they're putting up a lot of pet hair, it's recommended that you vacuum it. If you don't have pets like this, you really don't need to go in. And I do have pets, but they're short hair, and I just go in at the 6 month and I change my filter.
Okay.
I don't have to go in and vacuum it, but it's more for people like if you have a golden retriever, and I mean, or a husky or a long-haired cat that's just shedding, shedding, shedding. That's when you really need to go in and vacuum because we want to make sure that we keep the airflow going through the machine. So if there's
It's
a
not going
lot
to
of
massively prolong the life of it if you keep vacuuming it. Okay. It's
no,
probably me just like my type A personality. I'm like, let's keep this as clean as possible.
yeah, I mean, I would do it outside. Like if you have a concern, look, like if you have a mold problem in the house, wear a mask, put on some gloves, and deal with it outside. I think that's really, really important. And then, whatever comes out of that vacuum, make sure that you're thoroughly cleaning your vacuum before you're going back and bringing it back into the house. And so any precautions you can take, I think it's better safe than sorry. And just make sure that, like, if you have this issue, that you're being very, very careful.
And then Holistic Health Journey is asking, is it okay to have windows open when the Amazing Air is working, or is that kind of defeating the purpose? Is it better to close all the windows, filter the air, and then just breathe in that air?
I think you can open windows. Like if you want to have a window open the window.
Yeah.
And the air purifier will continue to move the air in the room. And so I think that that's not a challenge. So I would just live your life like you typically would, and make sure that you just have the air doctor or Amazing Air on auto. And so there's a couple more questions. One is like, where is the dealership in the UK? You can find our products. Vivian she has a link that she can share. And we have a really big promotion going on. We have them 4 times a year where we make it really affordable for people to get into the clean air space. Like we realize this is an investment for like health and homes and families. And so 4 times a year, we do really, really big promotions called Sale on Sale, where we really heavily discount the products on single units, on bundles, so people can make this investment and save some money at the same time.
So the link,
Another
if you want to head to my profile, it's the link in the bio. You'll find it there.
Yeah, I think you can save up to 300 pounds right
Mhm.
now on the units. And so we've got some really great discounts happening. And then there's another question here. Is small air purifiers like Levoit effective? So as we were discussing in the beginning of this, that's a hardware store type brand or Amazon brand, this company Levoit, and they're removing microns to 0.3 micron. So we're 100 times more effective than a Levoit air purifier. Also, Levoits don't typically have a dense carbon block filter, so they're not removing volatile organic compounds. Lastly, I'm not sure that a Levoit is a sealed system, so you run the risk of releasing, like capturing and releasing these things back into your environment, which is really scary because then you'll have like a concentration
Mhm.
of like mold spores in one area of your house where you think it's the safest, so the sealed system really important. And so yeah, I mean, Air Doctor and Amazing Air units are on a completely different level of sophistication than something like a Levoit.
And mold can get really angry when you start to disturb it. It's like with remediation, you have to be really careful to get someone who does it properly. Because if you like knock down a wall and there's like a contained area of mold and then you disrupt the mycotoxins, they can get really angry and start to spew out more of the mycotoxins, unfortunately. Yeah, another question. I think it's just going to be would you say just the same answer? Someone's just asking with different, like bluer classic 4800. It's just going to be the same, like amazing doctor, just on another level, the filtering a
Yeah.
more like smaller particle.
Look, I think the things to look for is that they're removing down to 0.003 microns. That's really important. That is the question you want to ask yourself when you're investing in air purification. So I think that that is what you want to look at. Everybody, like we have third-party testing. We display it proudly on our websites. And so you really want to make sure when looking for all air purifiers are not created equal. There's thousands of people in category. We pride ourselves as Amazing Air to be science-backed. We do third-party validation and testing on all of our products. And we are able to remove down to 0.003 microns. And we're very affordable. We really try and make an affordable, accessible machine. So, and then also carbon, like all carbon isn't created equal. Some air purifier companies spray carbon paint. That's not going to do anything for you. You want a really dense carbon filter that has permanganate in it to remove formaldehyde. So we've been making air purifiers for over 20 years. We have a lot of expertise in this area. Our engineers and scientists have been working on this for so long, and this is like the air purifier that we created to make sure we are really addressing everyone's issues from indoor contaminants, both organic and inorganic.
And it is an investment, but think of how much you are spending on supplements every month and health treatments and yeah, different solutions to your chronic health issues. And if it is driven, it's never just one thing. I feel like there's always multiple different factors, but air quality can be a huge thing. So it is an investment, but once you've got the unit, you're really just paying for the filters every 6 to 12 months, and that can really increase your health and your ability to heal with all of the other things that you're doing then.
Yeah, and these units last a really long time. Like we've had units out there now for 8 or 9 years, and they rarely break down. So they're very, very strong, hardy units. All you really need to do is change the filter, and it makes it pretty easy. And like the best part, I think, is the way it interacts with our families. Like it's just great to see like little kids playing with the lights on an amazing air. They're completely sealed. You don't really need to worry about it. Also, it becomes a member of the family, and it really teaches us about our behavior in the home. And that, I think, is the most magic. Like we have the filtration, we have the carbon, we have all this stuff in the machine, but how it interacts in our household is, I think, what really makes the brand special.
It's like with our body communicating with symptoms, we have to listen to it and pay attention when it's trying to tell us something. So when that light goes off, when it changes, we want to pay attention to what triggered that. One of the questions that I got in my Q&A box was, what else can I do? So they have air filters, but is there anything else that they can do to improve air quality of the home?
Oh
So
yeah.
I have a few recommendations. I would say ventilation. So just making sure that you are like maybe opening the windows on occasion, at least if you're not next to a highway or something. Things like plants can improve the air quality. Using dehumidifiers if you have high humidity, and especially if you're drying clothes indoors, you want to not only does it speed up the drying time if you use a dehumidifier at the same time, but yeah, it's gonna make sure that you're not getting high humidity levels, because that is another risk factor for mold growth. When your humidity starts to get above like 50-60%, yeah, that's a no-go. So dehumidifiers perhaps can be helpful as well, but you could always check your humidity. You can get like a humidity test little meter on Amazon, pretty cheap, and you just want to keep it below 50% or so. I don't know if you have any other
Yeah,
tips.
I do actually. Make sure you're using soy-based or coconut-based
Oh
candles.
yeah, candles, yeah.
Talking about earlier, candles are really, really naughty, and so we need to make sure that they're made from natural waxes, so we're not breathing in petroleum-based fumes. Also, exhausts. Like if you have a exhaust for over your stove, make sure that you're utilizing the exhaust when you're cooking. Like people just don't realize like what's pumping up off their stove, and so make sure that you utilize the exhaust in your house, in your bathrooms, in places that have like tight air. It's really important. And then lastly, watch your cleaning products. Cleaning products are really made with some really nasty toxic stuff. So as natural as you can get, I would really pay attention to cleaning agents. And then artificial fragrances, throw them out.
Out the window. Your Glade plugins and your Febreze sprays, no.
Yeah, throw them right out.
Immediately in the trash.
Yes.
And I'm pretty bad at this, but if you really want to elevate your non-toxic home, taking your shoes off, I'm like really bad for it. I tried it for like about 2 weeks in my new house, and it never stuck.
Yeah, because we're tracking all of that in, and you're really tracking in some disgusting stuff on your shoes. It's really like when you look into that, like, look, I always say like everything in moderation and like the 80-20 rule. But when you start learning, because I'm in this business of what you're actually tracking in on your shoes, it's kind of disgusting. So I think like if you can kick off your shoes when you get in, have a pair of house slippers, even better.
Yeah, get some cute slippers.
Yeah, you're just not bringing things into your home unnecessarily.
I need to definitely get into that. Pretty bad. I'll like go out the door on a dog walk and be like, oh, I forgot something, and then just like tread. I'll be too lazy to take them off and change. And I think that was the last of my questions. I feel like you covered a lot of it in terms of the actual product itself, which I'm not an expert in. So yeah, I feel like we covered everything. If there's any other questions for anyone on live, please just let us know before we finish up. But yeah, the sale's currently on as well, isn't it? Until how long's left on the sale?
I think it's going through the 28th or the 29th of this month. So
Great.
it's a really great time to get in and invest. If you're doing any pre-holiday shopping, it's a good time to get some purifiers at a discount or just outfit your home. Like I said, start with your bedroom first, most important. And we'll make sure that we tag everybody. I'm Helen Christoni. I'll put my name down there too. If you have any questions, I'm always available. And Vivian, it was so great to talk to you today. This was
You
amazing.
too. And I have, yeah, a lot of podcast episodes. So my podcast is Hormones in Harmony. I have a lot of the maybe from a couple of years ago now when I was really into my mold research and my mold healing journey. But if you want to search on my YouTube channel mold, you're going to find a lot of free, amazing content on there.
Awesome. All right, well, make sure to tune in. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Helen. See you later. Bye. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.